Okay, so let's dive into the stack of sources you sent us.
Yeah, so
Today, we're tackling something I know a lot of people have been really curious about. The reception, the critical analysis of Squid Game Season 2.
that's right. And we've got, well, quite a collection here. It's all English language reviews, some glowing, some not so glowing, some pretty critical.
Right.
And there's also a detailed sort of personal analysis, a deep dive into the season from the same material you provided.
Okay, good. So our mission really is just to unpack all of this. We want to get a sense of the range of reactions, see what points kept coming up, the good, the bad, and really try to understand the whole critical conversation around Season 2. This should basically be your fast track to getting up to speed on how it all landed.
Exactly. Let's jump in.
So, where do we start? What's the big picture from these sources?
Well, right off the bat, the sources make it really clear that the reception was, well, it was honestly all over the place. Yeah, they mentioned it being called everything from, sensational on one end to a thorough letdown on the other.
Wow, okay. That's quite a spread. Are there, aggregate scores mentioned from Metacritic or Rotten Tomatoes?
Yep, the material points to a Metacritic score sitting around 62 out of 100.
Okay, so middling.
Kind of.
Yeah.
And then Rotten Tomatoes, it had a pretty respectable critic score at 82%. But, and this is interesting, the audience score was reported as being lower.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so you can kind of see that split, that tension right there in the numbers.
Okay, so definitely a divide. Let's try and dig into why, based on what these sources are highlighting. It seems like one big thing running through the reviews is this question of evolution versus familiarity.
Exactly.
Did Season 2 build on the first one well, or did it just feel like, more of the same old thing?
That's precisely it. The sources show critics really wrestling with that. Some, like Variety, CNET, South China Morning Post, they saw it as a worthy follow-up. One even said, just as good as the show's first outing, and felt it was richer, more cohesive, really digging deeper into the themes.
So they felt it did evolve.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And Paste, joysauce.com, they praised its incisiveness, saying it felt like not only a continuation, but an evolution.
Yeah.
It kept the thrill, but explored new stuff.
Right.
And that personal analysis you sent, it touches on this too, saying that exploring the recruitment process, the outside world impact, that was seen as really enriching the whole world of the show.
Okay, but clearly not everyone was on board with that. What did the more critical sources say about this specific point?
Well, The Hollywood Reporter, for instance, was pretty blunt, described it as entirely lacking in new details or insights.
Ouch.
Yeah. And The Guardian felt it struggled to recapture that initial spark, saying it fails to capture the initial novelty. And that personal analysis also brings this up under the sort of what falls short section.
Yeah.
It mentions that the sheer freshness and novelty of Season 1 just didn't fully carry over. The shocks weren't as visceral.
So it's like, for some, the expansion felt necessary, rich, an evolution. But for others, it felt maybe a bit repetitive. Or it lost that raw, brutal edge that made Season 1 so, well, impactful.
That sums it up pretty well. It's that classic sequel dilemma, isn't it? Change too much, people complain. Change too little, they complain it's stale.
Totally. Okay, so another big area these sources talk about is characters and game design.
Right. New season, new faces, new games.
How did the new characters land?
It was mixed, according to the sources. There was one character, Hunju, frequently mentioned as a highlight. Some called her the best addition.
Okay.
Though the sources do also mention some casting controversies around the new characters more broadly. Didn't go into huge detail, but noted it was a point of discussion.
And what about the returning folks? Like the frontman, he had a bigger role, right?
He did, yeah. And Lee Byung-hun got a lot of praise for his performance there, adding nuance, layers, really well received, it seems.
Good, good. But not all newcomers were hits.
Apparently not. The analysis mentions one specific new character referred to as Thanos.
Thanos, like Marvel Thanos.
Well, that's the name used in the analysis, yeah. Probably a nickname or a descriptor. Anyway, this character drew some pretty sharp criticism, called cartoonishly awful.
Yikes. Cartoonishly awful is, not great.
Definitely not.
What about the games? Season 1's games were iconic. Did Season 2 measure up? I see TV Guide praise the variety, but there was a catch.
Yeah, TV Guide liked the new games, the variety, and the new characters involved, but they also cautioned that sometimes the format itself kind of lost its impact.
Okay. Which maybe ties into pacing.
Could be. And pacing and buildup was definitely another key theme in the reviews.
Right. How did the sources feel about the rhythm of the season, the tension?
Well, the sources note that critics generally commended the, high-stakes thrill, the buildup. The Wrap found the tension even more addictive than season 1.
Right.
Yeah, and praised the visuals, too. Called the show hauntingly photographed. Entertainment Weekly gave it a B grade, citing brutal thrills, but also a lot of buildup.
Okay, buildup can be good or bad, depending on the payoff.
True. And Pure Wow just flat out said Squid Game Season 2 is great, and they particularly liked how it explored the world beyond the games.
So, sounds like when it worked, it really worked. High tension, great visuals. Where did it maybe stumble on the pacing front, according to the sources?
The personal analysis pointed out that while that buildup was there, some viewers felt the middle part of the season kind of dragged a bit. And maybe the final payoff wasn't quite as explosive as they'd hoped after all that buildup.
Right.
This analysis also flagged something it called an overstuffed narrative.
Meaning?
Just potentially too many storylines, too many character arcs competing for screen time, which, can definitely dilute the focus and maybe weaken the pacing overall.
Yeah, that makes total sense. If you're juggling too much, things can feel less tight, less focused.
Okay, and what about the socio-political commentary? That's always been huge for Squid Game.
Still there, definitely. The sources continued to note praise for the show's critique of, capitalism, desperation, the core themes.
Oh, wait, I sense a bud coming.
Oh, yeah. Some critics felt that in season 2, the messaging wasn't quite as groundbreaking. Maybe felt a bit redundant compared to the first season's really powerful initial statement. Like, it was saying the same things again, rather than offering fresh insights.
Okay, and it's important we stress here, we're just relaying how the sources discuss these themes and the reactions.
Yeah.
We're not taking a side on the politics itself.
Absolutely. It's just about understanding why people react the way they did based on the material provided.
And speaking of reactions, that point about predictability also came up.
It did.
Yeah.
Personal analysis specifically noted that some twists felt a bit telegraphed.
Yeah, like viewers saw them coming. And that lack of surprise was maybe a bit disappointing compared to season 1, which just kept pulling the rug out from under you.
Yeah, predictability is a killer for a thriller, isn't it? Especially one built on shock value. It really sounds like the sources, and especially that detailed analysis you shared, paint this picture of a sequel that, look, it had real strengths, the visuals, some key performances, expanding the world, but it also really struggled with those classic sequel problems. Keeping the momentum, finding truly fresh ideas, balancing the new with the old fans' love.
That's a really good summary, I think. And those harsher critiques we mentioned earlier, calling it a letdown or messy and all over the place, which some audience members apparently felt from the New York Post and news.com.au.
Right.
They seem to stem from exactly those points. The lack of novelty, maybe the pacing issues, the mixed results with new characters, those predictable twists.
Any other strong negative takes mentioned?
Yeah. USA Today apparently gave it only 2 out of 4 stars, finding the plot outlandish and the ending unsatisfactory. The Independent also gave it 2 stars, saying it was less shocking, though they did concede it was still captivating in parts.
So a real mix, even within the negative or mixed reviews. Okay, let's pull this all together then. What's the kind of overall verdict presented in the sources, especially in that detailed analysis piece?
The way that analysis frames it is a strong, if uneven, sequel.
Okay.
So basically solid. It delivered on the brutality, the visual style people expect. It deepened some character arcs like Ki-hun's, but it just lacked that raw, groundbreaking feel of season 1. The analysis puts it in the B range. Admirable effort, good TV, but not necessarily a standalone masterpiece.
But still essential viewing for fans.
Oh yeah, definitely framed as essential for fans. It clearly escalates the main conflict, sets up season 3 in a big way. So if you're invested in the story, you pretty much have to watch it.
But not something that stands completely on its own like the first season did. Not a cultural phenomenon in the same way.
Right, that's the other side of it. Viewed as not a standalone masterpiece, it just doesn't quite recapture that same lightning in a bottle wow factor, apparently. And maybe doesn't deliver a perfectly self-contained tight story arc in the way season 1 did.
So the final take from this analysis is it's compelling, polished, expands the world.
Yes, all of that. Compelling, visually very strong, continues the story, deepens the characters and the ethical questions. It humanizes the horror more, perhaps, and definitely sets up what sounds like an epic confrontation for season 3. But yeah, it doesn't fully escape the shadow of season 1. Lacks what the analysis called the merciless clarity and that shocking novelty. So it's a solid follow-up, builds well in some ways, maybe stumbles a bit in others, caught between trying to live up to the original and needing to forge its own path forward.
Okay, wow. We've really dug through a lot there, explored that whole spectrum of reactions from the sources provided for Squid Game Season 2, from those seeing it as a worthy complex evolution, to those who felt it was, frankly, a letdown compared to the original. We've touched on the praise for the look, the feel, some performances.
And the criticisms about the pacing, the predictability, how the themes landed this time around, the new characters.
Exactly, and how all those tensions showed up in the aggregate scores and that detailed analysis piece.
So hopefully this deep dive gives you, the listener, a really solid handle on the critical landscape around Season 2, drawing purely from the information you shared with us.
Definitely. Now, as you think about all this really mixed bag of reactions, here's something to maybe chew on. What does this incredibly diverse reception tell us about the immense pressure, maybe even the impossible task of trying to follow up a global mega hit like Squid Game, a show that just completely reset expectations?
Or maybe think about what you value most in a sequel. Is it sticking faithfully to the original? Is it bold evolution, even if it's messy? Or is it just about trying to recapture that initial magic? How does that shape how you experience a show like this? Definitely something to ponder.